Oh, hello, everybody. This is Dr. Parker, your instructor, and I've been thinking, I know we started this course with Romanticism, and we keep talking about the stark break between Romanticism and the Age of Reason, or the Enlightenment as it's called. And it occurred to me that maybe you don't know what that big break is because you may not know anything about the Age of Reason or the Enlightenment. If you do, that's great. But if you don't, I'm going to start today with a poem and I'm going to show you a few things that would be examples of the Age of Reason, poetry from there. And then we'll take another look at one of the poems you're assigned, one of the Keats poems, and I'll show you the difference. I think you'll see how different they are and what we're talking about when we say Romanticism begins a new era. Okay, let's start with, you see there Alexander Pope, Essay on Man. Now, Alexander Pope wrote in the mid to late 1700s. And we know Romanticism starts with Blake about 1795, so he's not too far back. First of all, this is an extremely long poem. It is simply on what a man should be. And if we'll look at it, I think you'll see, I'm going to call it cut and dried. I'm not saying that it's not a good piece of literature. I'm just going to characterize it in comparison to literature that came after it. All right, let's look down to just the second line there, um, where we see, uh, can we reason? Let me get that highlight for you. Can we reason? Remember we were talking about the age of reason? Well, there it is. We haven't even gotten but two lines in. And we go down, and there it is again. Let's look at what else we've got before we even bother reading the poem. Um, he talks about uh, gradations, solid things, non-imaginative. And I guess we'd better read a little bit of it. Let me paraphrase it for you. So he's asking of God or man below, what can reason but what we know? And he says later on, though, that God knows. God's the one who knows. And he wants man to see that. Tis ours to trace him only in our own. He, through vast immensity, can pierce, see worlds on worlds, compose one universe. Okay, God can do that, so we don't have to worry about it. And now look, though, where even when he's talking about religion, he moves into the word system, into system runs. That almost sounds technological to me. And yet he's talking about planets that circle the sun, things that we would think of as being heavenly. He's got it into systems. Come down further. Look at, but of this frame. Can you see how concrete that is? The bearings, the ties, again, boundaries, strong connections. What I want you to try and see is the lack of imagination in this poem, the lack of reference to nature other than it being looked at how systematically. Okay, that's Pope's Essay on Man. Okay, let's go over here and now let's try the Romantics. And I'm kind of sorry that you have to look at so many poets in the beginning. I know poetry probably bothers students a little bit, but when it comes to Romanticism, it's the English poets that those are the ones we have to examine. So that's what we're doing. Let me explain the title to you first. Uh, you may be wondering who the heck is Chapman and what's going on with Homer. Well, Chapman is George Chapman. He was a famous translator of Greek literature, and he did this translation of Homer's Odyssey. Maybe you heard of that. He did this in about 1616. And I'll give you some more background in case you don't know. Homer is a great Greek writer about the 6th century BC, and he wrote the Odyssey. And that's a hugely imaginative tale. It's about the men returning from the Trojan War, and it took them 20 years, and they see all these fantastic things as they travel. Now let's look at, okay, sorry. So Keats has read Chapman's translation of Homer, and he's astounded. Keats is a reader. That's what they did back then. Okay, so this is on first looking into Chapman's Homer, first looking at Chapman's translation of Homer. Okay, first line, realms of gold, kingdoms, such imaginative things. Let me get some words for you that you may not know what they are. Bards, that means poetry, and fealty means faithful. So you may have to get your dictionary out to make some of these poems make sense. Um, so which we have, which poets in are faithful to Apollo, Greek gods. See how we're moving away from Pope? Um, Now look at this little phrase. Breathe, it's pure, serene. Doesn't that sound calming and uh, just completely different from Pope? Let's go down a little bit further. Remember when Pope was looking at the sun and the universe, it was all into systems. Here we have that when Keats read Homer, translated by Chapman, then he felt like some watcher of the skies. Like as a simile, when a new planet swims into his ken. Ken means knowledge. But here the planet swims. It's just lyrical. And let's look at this last one. You remember Cortez, the great Spanish explorer who discovered the Pacific Ocean? Here he's got another simile. Like stout Cortez, when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. I'll explain Darien in a minute. But the difference here, just swimming into his eyes where he can see. Even though this poem, the language may be a little bit alien to you, you can look to things like realms of gold, things like kingdoms, references to Greek gods. Um, Again, I like that watcher of the skies and the swimming planet. There he is. There it's, wait, let me highlight it a little bit better for you. That's the line I like. That one right there. Um, so when you compare the two, they're like they're like night and day. And you're going to be looking at some more poets, I think especially Shelley, that you'll see. I want you to look for lyricism, for references to nature. Here we have the Pacific, right? That's nature. That's the Pacific Ocean. This one does not speak greatly to nature, but you'll see it in the other poets. But it's in here. And then I promised to explain Darien, and Darien is an island top in the Caribbean. So that's very imaginative and peaceful. Let's see, Pope wrote this in, Keats wrote this in about 1819, his great year, they call it, where he produced most of his great poetry. So uh, it's really a great gift to the world that he wrote these things, and I hope when you study him you can see some of that and realize, even if it's difficult for you, how much it has changed from the age of reason, the time that came before. Okay? Well, that's the way I see it. I hope you do too. Thanks. Bye.